Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video we are going to talk about how to authenticate the users if they are stored in SQL Server within ASP.NET Core. So if you are not using any kind of a third-party database, you have your own database like SQL Server, you have your own users and a database for that. So how we are going to authenticate those users within the ASP.NET Core. The authentication process means you actually receive the username, password, authenticate it from the database. If they are all good, then you create a cookie session and then you move on. And then you could also provide the logout functionality. In my last video, I have already discussed about how to create cookie session. In case you have not seen that video, I would highly recommend to see that video. I'll also post the link to that video within the description of this video. So let's not waste more time into that. Let's delve directly into the basics of how to authenticate users from SQL Server within ASP.NET Core. So before we start writing code, I just want to discuss a few things. First of all, we'll need a small database with a table called as users or whatever the name you have created. I'm running a SQL Server not on Mac OS in the form of a Docker, rather I'm running SQL Server on a Windows machine within my home network. So I've connected to that. It has a test1 database and a table called as users. Now if you see, it has three columns: ID, email and password. I won't recommend to store password in a plain text just like one which I'm doing right now because this is only for demonstration purpose. But in the real world, you must use some kind of a hash mechanism like SHA-1, SHA-2 or SHA-3. SHA-3 is the latest one, by which you store a hash rather than using a plain text password over here. So that is the fundamental requirement of storing the data if we are gonna authenticate the users from the SQL Server. The next thing which we need to do in this case is I will not be using the entity framework to actually use the SQL operations. Entity framework is beyond, like I have to create and set it up. Rather, I'll be using the SQL data client, which is an online method of, like, if you remember the old ways, SQL data client, SQL reader, SQL data adapter, all those things could be used. So fundamentally, I'm going to use that. And in order to use that, you would need to install one of the packages, which is the command that I'm specifying. So .NET add package system.data.sql client, because SQL client is used for connecting onto SQL Server. So I'm actually using that reference to add that. Once it is added, what you need to do is you just need to import that using system.data.sql client. Okay, now this is the same project which I used for my last video for a session cookie. So I'll be just writing kind of a code over there. The next thing which you need to do is to create a class. Technically, this is a model class because we need to create a login form. And I already have a login.chtml, which if the cookie is not there, it would actually roll you back to the sign-in page or the login page. So we have a user.cs, which is a very small, simple class. So you have a user, it has an email, and it has a password. Two properties, which primarily matches with my database, email and password, because I'm gonna supply those two values. That's all. And now let's create that form with the help of the ASP.NET tag helpers. And what I need to do is I'll just need to use a model over here, and I'll specify the controller, the namespace name, which is I can just pick up because it needs to pick up that up. So use that models, and then user is my models, and user is my model class, right? So that's my model class. Now here I'm creating a form which is a tag helper using tag helper. So ASP controller is the home controller, and login post is the method, is the action, and then method is the post. Now what I need to do is I need to supply two parameters. One is for the label and one is for the span. Now the label and one is for the text. So what I can use is I can say span, label for ASP for, and I can specify which is email, because I need to specify an email out here, and that's there. And then I'll specify input, and then I'll say ASP for, which is gonna be type email, right? and then I can just give class form control. It's a bootstrap class, just in order to make sure it works fine. And then I can also create an input type, or let's say button class, let's say button primary, and then I'll simply say type is equal to submit, and then let's say login. Now let's try to run this and see whether this kind of makes sense, and then we'll complete the form and then we'll go with that. So we'll try to run it. It works and it has created the DLL. Okay, so now it says email, which is the label, and the text box, which is here, and then there is a button called as login. It doesn't apply that because we supplied it as, so it should be button primary. So there is a button class, and then yeah, so now you see it has changed. So now we need a password also, so we'll just go back and copy that to controls, which is fine. We could change it to like a arrangement of grid so that it looks fine, but this is only for demonstration purpose, so I'll be good with that. And this is for password, and then that makes sense, and then type is equal to password. Okay, let's go over there, and oops, I think so we don't have a password probably in the same way as it is expecting, so let's use that password, which makes sense. Let's go back, refresh that. Okay, let's save it. So it's not probably saved. Go to login, save it, and is not valid for that. Okay, so let's try rerunning it. Definition for password. Okay, so it says it does not contain a definition for password, which it should not, because there is a in the users.cs. Oh, because I was actually using the same code base. So in my home controller over here, I was actually demonstrating it for a different purpose, so that's why. So I'll just use a password. That was for the previous video, but because I'm using the same code base, so it is giving me some issues. Okay, so it started off, that makes sense. So there is an email and there is a password. Now this form is built up, which is perfectly fine, and it goes automatically to this place. Now what we need to do is we need to actually show user, write some code to authenticate the user from the database and then go from there. Now what we need to do in this case is we already have a login user. So what we'll do is in the login.html, so we'll say login user, which is this. So I'll change the action to login user, because in my home controller I'm gonna use this user. And then what we'll do is we'll go back to the home controller, and over here, because we are gonna get that data, so we'll say the first one is technically, I'll say string, and I'll say we email is equal to user.email, which is 1. So I'll get that value, and then string we password user.password. So these are the two values which I'll get it from here, which makes sense. Now we are going to authenticate the users from the SQL Server database, and that's the table which I've already shown you. So this was in my previous video, I hard coded some values, and then just for the demonstration purpose, like session cookie, how we could do that. But in this case, we are not gonna do it in the same way. We are actually going to authenticate from the database. So my first is SQL connection, and I'll just use SQL connection vcon is equal to new of SQL connection. And when you type in the SQL connection, you need to supply some parameters out here, which we are gonna use it in this case. And those parameters would be like what exactly the connection is gonna be using, SQL connection. So I'll say one is the server, so I'll just supply 192.168.4.20. that's the IP address for my database. User ID is equal to SA, and then password is equal to 123. As I specified, you should not keep these kind of passwords, but this is only my demo PCs and demo SQL Server, so I'm just using it for the demonstration purpose. So that's my connection string. I've initialized the connection. The second thing which I need to use in this case is to open that connection. So we'll say vcon.open, which is fine. Now, because I want to read the data from the table, so I'll be using SQL command, and I'll just simply say SQL command, and I'll say select ID, email and password from users, because I have a users database. Select password from users, and there is one thing which we missed, that is the database name. So database is equal to test1, which is perfectly fine. Password from users, and I need to supply the connection through which it would run. So that's my vcon. So that's the command which I'm gonna run, and then the actual thing. So technically, because it is, I'm expecting one user, because it is based upon the user. Let's say where, for example, I want to use, I need to supply the username as well as the password. So because in my database I have an email and I have a password, so what we'll do is, so where email is equal to, I'll just create a command. Let's say v email, which is the one which I'm getting, and then okay, so I'll just put it into a single quote because it needs to be a single quote, and password is equal to, I'll just supply on a single quote plus, and then I'll supply v password and then plus single quote. So that's how I'll use. Now fundamentally I won't recommend to use this single quotes and plus sign, because it could invite SQL injection. So you could use the $sign or other case by which C# could build a SQL builder or a string builder you could use, but this is only for demonstration purpose, so I'm just using it. So what I'm doing is select ID, email, password from users, where email is equal to this and password is equal to this. That's all. That's what we need to do. And then finally we pass it on a V connection, and we need to use SQL data reader, because SQL data reader we could go through the object and then get the values which we need if we want to add it into the claim types and all that stuff. So what we'll do is, so we'll use SQL data reader is equal to vReader, and then we'll say vcom.execute reader. So once it is executed, what I need to do is I need to loop through the reader. Fundamentally there should be only one record, because for an email and a password there should only be one record. So now we'll use the SQL data reader to go through this result and validate whether the record has been fetched or not. If the record has been fetched, it means the username password matched from SQL Server and the user is there. But if there was no record, so it means the username password didn't match or something was there, so the user is not validated. So what we'll do is data reader is equal to vReader, and we'll say vcom.execute reader, and it has a property called as vReader.has rows. Now this actually returns true or false. So if it has rows, right, not while, rather if. So if it has rows, it means the user is validated or authenticated. And else part, so it means if it was not there, so then we could use an else part and we could close and check the username and password. So this was the old one, in the old one video which I've written the code for. So I can just copy that and paste it over here. And then we'll just need to do is we'll just close this one, and that's all. So that's technically, I'm just closing this one, which is fine. This is the old code. So if the user is authenticated, I can just create the claims and then do the cookie session and return everything. So let's say I'm just gonna copy this and then paste it over here, because we can just use the same code. Claims is just like what kind of an information you want that user should be. So let's say a new claim is this. I can also create claim types dot email, which is, then let's say I'll just supply that email which the user supplied over here. So let's say these are the two claims, and then we just create this one, and rather than what we can do is we can actually return redirect to action, and then I'll just simply say index.home. So this is how you actually create the claims and create a cookie and do all that stuff, and then these claims could be used for further authorization or for further role management or whatnot that could be used. These claims are also available within Google or Facebook sign-ons when you actually sign in through those social medias, and when you get the token, those claims are available by default. Some of the information is being passed to you. So this makes sense. Now what we'll do is we'll go back and let's see. We'll refresh this. So firstly, I'm just gonna do something test@test.com. So now this is a user. I don't have it in the database. If I say login, and it would say please check the username and password, which makes sense. And if I say Rohit@rohit.com and I'll say password is 123, I'll press login and success is equal to true. Okay, now it didn't go through that. So let's check it out why it didn't go through, because we didn't save it probably, and it gave us okay, because it is going on to index.home. Now the index.home page is where it is in the index over here, and let's see. So this is the login.html, which is login user, and in the home controller login user, which is this, and then you go on to index and then go on to home page. It should go, but why it is giving us an issue error, view does not exist in the current context view data. Okay, so let me see if I'm using some index.html. No, I'm not using anything. So fundamentally it should authorize, because this is an authorized one. So it should go and the index view result, which should be fine. Okay, let's give it another try. So we'll just run this. Okay, so it is giving else in the structor, which is at home controller line 87. So line 87, let's see where it is giving us an issue. Okay, please check the username, and then it goes, okay, I just missed out probably bracket. Okay, oh no, I didn't miss out a bracket. This is the one which is the bracket for this one. Okay. Yep, else, and can't close. I don't need this. Okay, please check the username. That's fine, I don't need this. Let me remove this one. So this is all gone, which is all good. It goes, has rows, create claims, identity claims, authentication, claims identity, and then I pass on the cookie authentication with the claims principal. Okay, and then redirect to action, index, and home. Now I could also use vcon.close to close the connection, which is okay, and then it goes on to the authorized index, and it should actually be good. Now, okay, so it still says line number 70, line number 70 home controller. So line number 70 home controller. Oops, I just wrote a different one, which looks fine. Okay, and then line number 83 is this return, oops, not a redirect. Okay, return redirect to action, that looks fine. Okay, so it creates that and it started. So it automatically went on to that particular code. Now what I'll do is I'll just remove the cookie. So I'll just go on to the inspect and application, and I'll just go on to the application and remove this cookie. So I'll just clear this. Okay, now I'll just refresh it. So once you refresh it, because the cookie is not there, so it automatically sends me into that. So if I say Rohit @ let's say test test.com 123, and I specify login, wrong password, username does not exist. So Rohit rohit.com 123, and I'll press login. So it immediately signs me up and goes on to index page. You inspect it, and if you go on to the application, so it would specify all those stuff for you. So you have this session cookie over here, which is perfectly fine, and then it works for creating a session and do that. So we can also use the logout, but fundamentally this is how it should be done. So I hope, guys, this is a little bit of, I know, a longer video, but this is how we could actually authenticate the users within ASP.NET Core from the SQL Server database. I'll be coming back with more authentication mechanisms like from Postgres and other ways in my further videos. So please stay tuned and have a good one. Thank you.